You are listening to the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Magnify Maggie. This podcast will turn your perception of going sober upside down. We're going to be working from the inside out to get you that dream life. So make sure you stick around for the end of the episode where I'm going to walk you through our weekly positive pursuit exercise to begin rewiring that beautiful mind, baby. I have had to get very comfortable and acquainted with death. I am 33 years old, and I, like a lot of people my age, have lost my grandparents. And of course, that was very difficult. But beyond that, I've also lost my parents. And before that, it was my brother. I was a very young person when I lost my brother. And most of the death that I have experienced was not expected or planned, like a lot. It was nothing that we could have anticipated. And so, like many, I found myself drinking away my pain, drinking away what I had taken from the loss that I had experienced. And I think there are so many people that are in the same position that I was, that I want to help, because it wasn't understanding the stages of grief that helped me. It wasn't going to church. It wasn't going to grief support groups. It was studying and understanding life and looking back on the loss that I have experienced and drawing new meaning from it. So to kind of lay the foundation, I want to illustrate really what my belief system was after my first loss. That was really traumatic with my brother. Trigger warning, of course, for this episode, we're going to obviously be talking about death, but including suicide, death from alcohol-related illnesses. But my brother took his life when he was 14 and I was 12, and we were home alone, and I was the one that found him. And that was something that I still sometimes have trouble wrapping my head around. But it wasn't until very recently, in the absence of alcohol, that I was able to find a peace, a meaning for it. Because in the beginning, directly after my brother passed away, there was so much guilt. There was so much remorse, regret for not seeing the signs, not being there for him, not physically being with him at that moment. What could I have done differently? As a 12-year-old, I was wanting to blame myself for not being responsible, or for being responsible, rather, for my older siblings' loss. And having a mom that was also blaming herself, but spreading that pain onto me, saying things like, I wish you were the one that passed away. I wish you were, what were you doing? Why weren't you watching Eric? Why weren't you with him? These negative things that really permeated my self-image and caused this guilt around my brother. In addition to that, it was this idea that my brother was going to hell. It was my mom's third husband that told us, I'll pray for his soul that he doesn't go to hell. And all of these really horrible ideas were really what kept me in this cloud of pain and anguish. And of course, someone that's feeling that way every single day, that can't find a positive meaning from something, they are going to lean on something. They are going to find a tool for that comfort and that soothing and the escape from the pain. And so for a very long time, up until, rather recent, I had this anger towards God for giving me this life and taking away my brother in such a way that made me feel responsible and made me feel guilty. And that belief system, whether or not God is real or hell is real, that belief system in and of itself led me down a dark path. And I think that is one of the first areas that I started to study that gave me peace and gave me a sense of ease, was understanding that it's not like when people pass away they are, and at least this is the belief that I've come up with through studying some really awesome resources that I'm going to drop at the end of the episode, but that they're not super far away, either in hell or in these magical clouds where we're completely detached from each other. They're somewhere over there, but I'm here on earth and I miss them. I am disconnected from them. That was really this idea that I had. And then I started to learn the laws of the universe when it came to energy. And I created a new belief system around what happens, because it weighed on me so much that my brother would be on the other side somewhere still in pain, or on the other side somewhere so far away that I still missed him and I wished I could turn back time, and I would think over and over again about how I could, if I could just go back in time, if I could just go back in time, if I could just, that narrative and that way that I was thinking, that conditioning, kept me from ever showing up for my present day as me, as myself. I was always carrying that pain of Eric into my current day. If I could just go back and turn time, then he wouldn't be so far away and he wouldn't be intangible. And before we get into kind of the other loss that I've experienced and had to reframe in my mind, this is the idea that allowed me to feel comfort without alcohol when it came to grief and loss. And that is that energy is neither created nor destroyed. This is a primary law of the universe, and it feeds into the law of vibration. So everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. And we as human beings, we are energy. Our body is energy, but it's actually our spirit that is the most energetic portion of us. And our spirit moves into body in birth, and our spirit moves out of body at death. And as a society, we have been conditioned to celebrate birth and then grieve death. And I had to shift my beliefs around death. I had to see that Eric's energy moved into form when he was born, and it moved out of form that day when I was 12 years old. But that energy was not destroyed. That energy is 100% evenly present everywhere around us. And when I stopped looking at it as Eric is gone forever, and I could start looking at it as Eric is still everywhere around me, it's just not how I was taught to look for him, then it gave me that comfort and the peace that he's okay and that I'm okay and that I can still connect with him. And I can still see him and feel him in the world around me. I had to study death. I had to study accounts of near-death experiences where people crossed over and then were brought back to life. And I had to learn that death in and of itself, every person that has, experienced those things where they were medically labeled as dead and then brought back to life, they all said the same things of how great it felt and how happy they were and how comforted they were. And that helped me see, okay, in that experience for Eric, it wasn't something that I need to dwell on and be sad anymore, because it freed him and it helped him feel good again, and he was safe, and he's still every single place around me. And when I call on him, I have a freaking angel just in waiting to help me pull strings, waiting to help me make this growth in my life, and helping me in all of the ventures that I have ahead of me. And so I had to change the way that I thought about death, and then I had to change the way that I felt about his death. And I've shared this before, something that I don't think my dad probably ever recognized that he planted in my mind, but I remember a conversation that I had with my dad. I was 14. I was as old as Eric was when he passed away, which if you have any older siblings, it's a very peculiar thing if they pass away and you age over them. It's a very psychological throwing experience because you look up to them and you're like, they're so wise. And then you become their age and you're like, actually, like they had a lot of learning to do still. He was just a little kid. But what my dad told me one day in my emotional state that I was, he said, I think that you were guided through this life with a strong male protector because you have a bigger purpose. He said, when I was deployed and you were home alone with your mom, you needed somebody to protect you. And Eric took on a lot of that brunt. And then when my dad was done deploying, that's when I moved back in with him. And that's when Eric passed away. And so he said, maybe it was like God or the universe making sure that you were handed off to a safe environment before your protector was called up to heaven, and however he phrased that. And that really helped soothe my soul in seeing that maybe it had nothing to do with me not watching over him. Maybe it had nothing to do with what we could have done differently. It could have just been this grand scheme of things that in our conscious awareness, we cannot see. We cannot understand how life is supposed to unravel. And if we can't have this belief system in something, then we're probably going to end up blaming ourselves for everything. And that belief that my dad planted in my mind then, it took a long time for it to become nurtured enough to then grow into what you see here. But I don't think he ever understood what he was doing, but that was probably the best thing that I'd ever heard. And something that really traumatized me even more was the fact that before that day, Eric, throughout our childhood, had played games where he pretended to do things like that. Like I would go into the room and I'd find him with a pair of scissors and he'd act like he was asleep or, passed away or something. And there were 3 or 4 times in my childhood that I remember him pranking me in that kind of sick way. And my dad said, what if he was kind of training you? What if he was kind of, just giving you a sense of ease so that if it were to happen, if that's the way that the universe was supposed to call him up, then that day you didn't find it as traumatizing as you would have. I don't know if that's true, but, some of the things that he said, it just really helped me see that there could be something bigger to his death than just me. Just what did I do wrong? And, to carry that forward, after losing my grandparents, my dad passed away when I was 28, and he was my confidant, and he was my best friend, and the one person in my family that really I could go to and express my feelings. I talked about that in a recent episode of how I learned to not express my feelings, but with my dad, I could. And that was something so amazing. And I remember when my dad passed away, I didn't think it was possible, but I fell to my knees and I said, this is more painful than Eric's death. This is 1,000 times more painful. And again, I had to continue doing that work to shift my perception of death and life. And it was what I call my breaking moment to my waking moment. It was as if Eric's death caused me to run away and want to hide in alcohol. And that was when I was 12, then all the way to 28. It was my dad's death that woke me up to say, I do not want to waste another minute in alcohol because who knows? I've already experienced so much death. Who knows what's going to happen to me tomorrow? What's going to happen to my husband in a year? What's going to happen to anybody in my family system, anybody that I love, that I do have here right now in their physical form, that I can hug and touch and hear their laughter and memorize the way their voice sounds. Can I step away from alcohol in order to enjoy those things and savor those things? Absolutely. So it was my brother's death that pushed me into drinking, and it was my dad's death that woke me up to the silliness and the wastefulness of drinking, because I spent so much time shunning my dad. As amazing as he was and as great of a bond as we had, we were very, very similar. So we would butt heads. And, I would be angry about Eric, and I would be drinking my Thanksgiving break away. And instead of going to Thanksgiving dinner with my dad, I would call him and say, I'm just having a hard day. I can't possibly make it because I'm just so sad about Eric. And he'd say, babe, girl, feel better. Let me know if you want to ride. I'll come pick you up. Those kinds of things. He was always supportive, but I wasn't getting involved with him because I was drinking away my pain with Eric or my mom. She wasn't passed away, but I was drinking away my pain of the childhood trauma. So that's a little bit outside of it. But, my father's death taught me that death is going to happen to everybody. Death is going to catch up to each and every one of us. And if we aren't spending our time right now, then it's going to be very likely that if something happens, we're going to live a life of regret. And that was the point in my life where I said, no regrets. Is that from the movie? That's when I said no regrets anymore. No regrets. I'm not going to continue living a life where I'm shutting out the people who are here because I'm drowning my sorrows from people who I've lost. And it's actually a pattern that I was angry about for my mom that then I started to embody. This is wild, but it happens all the time where these generational cycles continue. I was angry at my mom when my brother passed away because she was saying things like, I wish you were the one that died. I wish that you were the one that, if I had one child that was taken from me, I wish it was you. Like, I don't understand why she said those things, but I was so angry at her. Like, you're sad because you lost one child, but you have two other kids that are here in the flesh, wanting to love you, wanting to be around you as their mom. And she shunned us. And then I was doing, as angry as that made me, I was doing that exact same thing in my life where I was shunning my husband, shunning my dad because of the pain that I felt from the grief and loss, that I wasn't able to sit in the beauty of life as it was right here, right now. I'm, as crazy as it sounds, I'm very thankful for everything that has happened to me. Again, we're all going to have our moment. We never know when it is. And when I look at my life, I say, I'm very thankful that the people in my life had the way out that they did, because that freed them, whatever their own pathway was. But also having those death experiences early for me in life has taught me the fragility of life, the preciousness of time. It's taught me to enjoy the small things. And it was one of the main factors in me stepping away from alcohol, because there were so many times that I would say, oh, I loved going on this trip with my dad, but I have zero memories from it because I was blacked out drunk. I have zero memories of what my dad told me on my 25th birthday when he took me out for a surprise dinner because I was blackout drunk. So death has given me a value of memories and life itself. And something that has helped me along the way, because I say all of these things like I'm super enlightened and I don't have hard days. I cry almost every day about this stuff. But something that has soothed my soul, that is not alcohol, is, again, self-study. So there's some resources that I started to learn from that were not the stages of grief. It was not the formal kind of lines of religion. It was, and this is going to sound crazy, but studying spiritual leaders that channel people from the other side, channel spirits from the other side. It was reading and learning about death experiences and the accounts of how that felt, because it made me so sad to think about my dad and his motorcycle accident. Was he in pain? Did he know what was going on? Did Eric know what was going on? All of those things were very, very painful. But in studying these other perspectives of grief and loss and death itself, I've said, you know what? Death is a part of life. And if we're all going to go out one way, then why not get somewhat comfortable with it and re-perceive grief? One of my favorite resources is a man by the name Daryl Ankar, who channels, again, this is going to sound really loopy, but man, it's helped me. He channels a spirit called Bashar. So if you look up Bashar, it's Bashar. You will find a bald man who talks with his eyes closed because he's channeling Bashar. And one of the lessons that changed my life was when he talked about re-perceiving grief, because we are so conditioned to have this idea that if somebody dies, they are far, far, far away. But the thing is that, again, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is ever present. It moves into form and it moves out of form. So at death, when it moves out of form, it's still everywhere around you. And how does energy communicate? How does energy show up? Through frequencies. We think on frequencies. And one of my common experiences that would really cause immediate tears is something that I think a lot of people experience is they have this moment where they think about a subject and then they say, oh, I want to call my dad on this. And then there's that gut punch of, wait, I can't call my dad anymore. Or, oh my gosh, I want to tell Eric this. Oh, wait, I can't tell Eric this. And in the moment of being like, oh, I want to tell them without remembering that they're gone, in the moment of, I want to tell them this, Bashar explained that is you tapping into the same frequency as their spirit or their energy. But it's your conscious mind that then says logically, what I've been programmed through life here on earth by other humans is that once you're dead, you're gone. Oh, now I'm going to remember that they're gone forever. That's going to make me cry. Just that little experience of, ooh, I want to tell them this. That means you're telling them this. That means you're talking to them. That means you're on the same frequency. And especially if your loved ones, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I have done so much research. I'm just kind of telling you, sharing with you what I've learned. When you are on that frequency, in that emotion and that feeling of they're close, I could talk to them, that's because energetically they are close and they want to talk to you. And if they see that you are connecting with them often and they see that every time they connect with you, it brings you joy and lifts your spirits, then they're going to do it more and more. But guess what? If every time you think about them and have that energizing moment of, oh my gosh, I want to tell them this, and then you follow that up with, but I can't ever tell them that again. They're gone forever and they're so far away. And why is life like this? Why I'm going to miss them so much. I wish I could turn time back. If you're always going into that avenue, then they're going to say, I don't want to keep tormenting her. I don't want to keep doing this to her. And I'm not going to allow her to tap into my frequency until she's strong enough to actually be there and sit with it of, hey, I can accept that they're gone physically, but they're still here energetically. Another way that happens daily for me, another way that what I call my angels come through is through music. So if you study this, a lot of spiritual leaders and mediums of that nature will say their energy will communicate to you through frequencies what are common ways that things travel through frequencies in our day and age now. Music is something that I find astounding. I will be walking down Fremont Street here in Las Vegas, and it's playing the top 20 pop hits. And all of a sudden, I start thinking about my dad. He loved Las Vegas. He loved being out here. All of a sudden, I'll kind of think, oh, my dad would love this. He would love this little shop here. And then a Bruce Springsteen song comes on that we used to sing together in the car, or a Jackson Browne song comes on. And it's like out of nowhere, here is this message from my angel on the other side saying, I'm still here with you. And if you're looking for these things, you will find them in abundance. You'll be driving one day, and all of a sudden, this has happened for me so many times. I'm here in Las Vegas. I'm driving one day. As soon as I start thinking about my dad, there's a Harley Davidson that looks just like his. Or there is somebody with a Chiefs license plate. And my dad and I loved Chiefs games. So it's like all of these little ways that he pops in and says, I'm still here for you. I'm still guiding you. I'm still along this ride with you. That helps my heart say, you know what? It's not worth drinking away my pain, because I can transition my pain into gratitude that he's here with me, that I can still create a life of happiness and not be spending my life wishing that I could turn time backwards. And so it really is a combination of creating new beliefs around, if it's religion, then that's your thing. Creating new beliefs around what happens when somebody dies, because you're allowed to have your own belief. You don't have to have it black and white like so much of our society dictates. You don't have to believe everything that's logical to mainstream population. You can believe whatever you want. And that belief, if you pick a good belief, it will propel you forward. It doesn't matter if it's true. If you believe it and it's good, it's going to do good in your life. So for me, I've picked these beliefs like, I was meant to be the one with Eric because that experience made me stronger. That experience taught me to value life more. That experience gave me a lot of empathy for suicide prevention. That experience has helped me not want to do something of that nature to myself. I think I meant to mention this kind of closer in the start of the conversation, but if you study suicide, there's a lot of indicators that point to sibling copycat suicide. Or, there were points in my life where my drinking was so out of control that I would think about those things. When I got a DUI, guess what? I got put in a straitjacket because I said I was going to kill myself. But that never happened because in the back of my mind, I knew what it would do to my family. I knew how it felt on my end. I knew that there would have to be somebody that found me. So it changed me and made me stronger and gave me a different perspective. When my dad passed away, I had to say, okay, that's my waking point. I don't want to waste my life anymore. When my mom passed away, it gave me that much more drive to connect with people that are here because I spent the last 8 years of her life in basically a non-contact relationship. And that, yes, it helped me, but at the same time, when she's gone, I can't do anything about it. So I've had to change my beliefs around what death is, but then with each and every individual death, I had to learn to accept it and to harvest the good and forgive the rest. And that's actually your exercise for this week. It is an exercise in what's called post-traumatic growth. And we talk a lot as a society about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. I'm not saying that you have PTSD, but if you've gone through grief and loss, then you've experienced trauma. But there's another conversation aside from what to do about PTSD. It's let's learn about post-traumatic growth. And post-traumatic growth defines bouncing back even better and finding value in the traumatic experiences so that you're not just resilient and getting back to where you were, but you're actually getting to a better version of yourself. So creating a new normal to the point that you are thankful that those things happened to you. Because guess what? In anybody's life, things are hard. Things happen to us, but it's about making sense of it that makes you feel good. So post-traumatic growth exercise for this week is number one, and this might be more of a mental challenge than writing it out, but of course, write things out because it does offer catharsis and just expression of energy. So accept it. So accepting what is, understand that there is nothing in this world that's going to help you turn time back. So how can you look at this situation, whatever's happened, and say, I accept this. It has given me value because. And for me, on the days where I just can't find the value, I say, well, now I have a whole team of angels helping me out. I've got a whole fan club around me that cannot be seen, but they're pulling some strings for me and they're always listening. I don't have to call them because they're always right here if I want to get on their frequency. So accepting what is. Number two, harvesting the good. I am here right now harvesting the good of my traumatic experiences. It doesn't have to look this grand of a scale for you, but how could you harvest good? Maybe you are somebody that experienced suicide in your life. Could it be volunteering with suicide prevention groups? Could it be volunteering with CASA? Could it be going to meetings and helping people in grief and loss? What could that look like for you to harvest the good and say, what good came out of this? Or how can this fuel my fire for the benefits of life? And then number three is forgiving the rest. And I think number one and number three were probably the hardest for me. Forgiving the rest just means abandoning it, not letting yourself dwell in what you could have done or what somebody else should have done, but just saying, again, I can't change time, but what can I do right now so that that doesn't happen, so that I don't walk around with guilt or shame or resentment any longer? Because those things, if you have judgment for something, if you can't forgive somebody, if you can't forgive a circumstance or a situation in life, then that doesn't harm anything outside of you. It only harms you in putting you in a negative vibration, tarnishing your soul, the way you feel about things. If you're carrying around resentment and you're unable to forgive, you are only hurting yourself. So how can you forgive? And I actually had a really powerful word introduced to me by a therapist. When I would talk about my mom, she said, you don't have to forgive her, but think about exonerating her. Because for me, forgiveness in the moment was really difficult, but exoneration is like just saying, I recognize what you did and I'm just going to set you free. And I'm not going to harbor those negative feelings. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I could exonerate her. Basically just detaching from that chain that I had linked between the two of us. I had to forgive, but before I could forgive, I had to just exonerate, just abandon, leave it alone, and focus on things that make you feel good. So some of those other resources I wanted to drop here too, as you're going through your post-traumatic growth exercise, accepting it, harvesting the good, and forgiving the rest. Do some self-study. So I'm going to list a few here. Dolores Cannon is an author. You can also just kind of search on Instagram for her accounts. Her videos always show up. I feel like I wish she was my grandma. She has some really great resources on understanding life and death. She is one of those people that channels the other side and talks about the spiritual realm and what people experience when they do pass away, and how beautiful that is. That really helped me understand that, like, I didn't have to have these moments of anguish imagining that my dad was in pain or imagining that Eric was in a lot of pain. So Dolores Cannon. Abraham Hicks. Abraham Hicks was an author. And then if you look Abraham Hicks up on YouTube, you'll actually find Esther Hicks as the speaker in most of the video content, because Esther is Abraham Hicks' daughter. She channels Abraham from the spiritual side. And it's really just mind-blowing, things that most people would shun and say, this is all a bunch of hokey pokey. It's like, I think this is probably what people have been talking about for 6,000 years in our society, that just modern culture has breezed over. And then I think one of the last experts that I would point to is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's pretty popular nowadays, and he talks a lot about neuroscience, but look up what he has to say about death and grief and loss, and how just the way that you perceive those things can dictate your life. He has a book. It's not about grief and loss, but if you read it through that lens, the book, You Are Your Own Placebo, it really opened my eyes to how much I was letting the judgment and the guilt and the resentment affect my life. And it was a placebo effect for what I thought was alcohol addiction. Those feelings I thought were permanent, that meaning I thought was permanent, which was manifesting into drinking behavior, becoming my mom. And when I read that, I realized, okay, if I carry around these feelings and I don't accept and I don't harvest the good and I don't forgive, then my life will always look this way. And I, again, did not want it to look that way. So some good resources. If you are wanting some more, drop a comment. Make sure you subscribe. Instagram, message me. Other than that, I think that's it. I know today was some tough subjects, but I want to send you all the love, and go do something really good for yourself after this. Lift yourself up into high vibes, and remember that it's up to you. It all goes down in the mind. You can think different in order to drink different, or never again. We'll talk soon. It means the entire world to me that you have been here with me, letting me share my experiences and hopefully helping open your eyes to a bright, beautiful life ahead of you as well. So if you are loving this show, please, please, please subscribe, like, comment, and especially share this with somebody that might be in need. Please help get the word out. Word of mouth is so important, and I know that you're somebody special who can help me in this mission for thinking differently in order to drink differently, or never again. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions you want discussed on the podcast. I'm here for it. So I'll talk to you soon. Signing out, Magnify Maggie.